Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest video on Yii2. And we're looking at setting up Yii2 Basic in this video. So if you are following the series, this is the second video. This is actually working with Yii2, and what we're going to do today is we're going to make sure that we can use it inside an IDE, integrated development environment. Okay, so let's get started. Now, if you remember from last time, we had a folder called tutorial, and inside that folder we had created a folder called Yii2, into which we'd put most of the Yii code that we're going to be using, and we'd renamed the web folder into public HTML to remind us that anything that goes into here is public. So the first thing we need to do is we need to use an integrated development environment, an IDE. And I would recommend that if you have your own favorite, you use that. You don't have to use anything that I say. So if you like, for example, Sublime Text, use it. If you like Atom, use it. If you like VS Code, use it. I personally use NetBeans, and this is NetBeans 10, which is the latest version of NetBeans, and it also supports PHP 7.3. This is the standard interface for NetBeans 10. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is, of course, create a project. You can see I've got a couple here already, but I'm going to create a project. So we'll click on the Create Project, click on PHP, and then you want PHP application with existing sources. Click on Next. You want the correct folder, and if you remember, it's called Tutorial. So click on that. I'm going to change this to 7.3. We'll call the project name Tutorial. You can call it whatever you like. Okay. Leave the default encoding to UTF-8 for now, and I'd recommend that you don't put the metadata into a separate directory. Okay, now here we're going to look at how we're going to run the configuration. So it needs to know where our index file is, and it's in public HTML and it's called index. We're not going to be using index.test until much later on, so let's just use the index. And you don't have to copy the sources. If you want to know what all of this does, I actually do have a set of videos that I'm creating, and I'm partially through creating a set of videos about everything within Beans, and I'll put a link to that up at the top. So yes, it will go into much more detail. So we've got local website running on a local web server. If you've got XAMPP, then that's perfectly fine. We have the project URL, and the index file is in public HTML /index. So click on Finish. Now, when you do this, it will take a minute or two to set everything up. It does actually scan the project. It does do a number of things project, and it can take, right, it says Smarty templates have been shown, so we will click to enable support, and you can see it's in the notifications here. So if you right click on that, okay, you can then delete it because we've already dealt with it. Now, the background scanning of the projects will take quite some time. So while that's doing that, if you remember, it wanted to know where the index.php file is. It's opened it, and if you remember, we changed the index.php file to point to the Yii2 directory, which we created here. Now, some of you will be wanting to use Git and set up Git for this, but before we do that, we have to actually set up git ignore correctly, otherwise there will be some problems with that. So let's have a look. We close the index and we'll open the git ignore. Now, very important, NB project wants to be omitted, like it is here. And one of the things that we need to think about is we changed where some of the folders are. So we're going to have to put in the path, the folders which we changed. Oops. And again. And finally, Yii2 Vagrant. And that should be correct. Now you notice that the MB project file is not actually shown, but if we look at the actual file, you'll see that it does exist. Okay, what happens is NetBeans does ignore that usually. But we have to make sure that the NetBeans project files are ignored because we don't want those up on Git, or we don't usually want them. That should cover most of what we want, and we can then save that. So that's git ignore set up, and I believe correct. I'll soon check that in a moment. Now we need to actually set up a Git repository for this. Now you can actually set one up on the web. At the moment I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do it locally. And to do that, if you click on tutorial and then right click, we come down to we have to wait for the scanning. Okay, it seems to be ready, and it automatically says initialize a Git repository, so we shall do that. And it's asking where to do this, and the root path is correct. If this is not correct, then you need to put it in, but click OK, and you will see if I open File Explorer, we now have a Git directory. We can do a first commit, but again, we've really got to wait for the background scanning of the projects to finish. Now this does take some time, so wait until that has finished before you actually do your first commit. And I'll show you how to commit in NetBeans. Just right click on the project, then you come down to Git, and you can see it says commit. Clicking on that will bring up the Git commit window, and you can see there's quite a lot in there to be committed. Okay, and if it's going to be the first commit, then you probably just want to type in first commit and then click OK. I'm actually going to wait until it's finished doing the background scanning of the project before I do the commit. Once you've committed, and one of the nice things about NetBeans is that if there are any uncommitted files, you get a little icon next to the directory. Now you can see I'm getting some errors. This is because we've not done our first commit, and you can see if we open it up, then virtually everything. But if you remember, we omitted the vendor directory when we were in git ignore, so you can see the vendor directory is not included, so you can see what is included and what isn't included. Okay, so we'll come back when that is finished doing the first commit, but we can test to see if everything is working. If we click on the run button, we should get a screen that looks like that, and as you can see, everything is working. And this is the default Yii2 screen. There's quite a lot of information here. First of all, you've got a nice little menu bar at the top, and you've got home, you've got an about page, you've got a contact us page which also has a capture on it. You've got a login, which is very basic. but you can log in as admin or demo. We'll again look at all of that later, and if you click on my application, it goes back. Also, because this is in the test environment where you're actually creating it, there is at the bottom, Yii has put in a lot of information, and again, this is something that we'll go over later. Okay, and you can see there's a lot of information, a lot of debug information available in case you have problems. These are all 200, which means it's fine, it's not a problem. Right, and to actually close this, there's a little arrow here which will close it. So this is the default Yii2 page, and it should work automatically. Now, if it doesn't work automatically, this could be because you haven't included all the correct files in the correct directories. So this is what the directory structure should now look like. .git. If you're using NetBeans, this should be a NetBeans project. It should say public_HTML. Yii2, you should have a git, a .gitignore file, a license file, and a README file. You can ignore the git and the NB project, they're not part of the problem. In the public_HTML, you shall have the following files and folders, and you should also have made the changes to the index.php file, which I'll just bring up. So you should have included Yii2 / before vendor. Now it has to be in those 3 positions, so there, and there, and it must be in this position. You can also do the same on the test as well. So again, Yii2 / before vendor on those 3 items. So if you've done that, it should work. Now, if it doesn't work, it could well be that you haven't set up the runtime environment correctly. So click on Tutorial and come to Properties, and then you can come to Run Configuration. Ignore the rest for now. We're wanting to make this work. It should be a local website running on a local server, and XAMPP should be up and running, and so should the Apache web server inside that. Your project URL should look something like http / localhost / tutorial / and then the index file should be public_HTML / index.php. And your browser, you can pick whichever browser. You'll see I've got a number of different browsers. I've actually got more than these that you can see because I test them, but the IDE's default browser is the one it should be set to. And click OK, and in doing so you should, say, get the correct page. That one. Okay, it's done the background scanning of the files. So right click on Tutorial, click on or highlight Git, come down to Commit. It's a first commit, and you should have your author and everything in there. If you haven't installed Git on your computer, again, I've got a video on that. I'll put a link at the top for you, and just click on Commit, and you'll see at the bottom it's saying committing. Because there's a few files, it'll take a moment, and then the little icons are actually removed from the tree view, so you know there's nothing to commit. And that's all there is to setting up your IDE, setting up Yii2 in your IDE. In the next video, we're going to look at configuring some of the items that you need to configure before you can do any useful work. So I hope you found that useful. My name's John. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.